housekeeping gift. For those who just walked in, please fill out the survey. You'll have a chance to win. I want to hear what you've learned. Students, might you consider a career where your compensation is not maximized, but your overall well-being is maximized by working for an organization that has a purpose, a social purpose, a societal purpose beyond just making money? Might that be something of interest to you? 8 years after graduating from JMU with an accounting degree and following a stint as a CPA, Chuck Snyder joined National Cooperative Bank as CFO and Corporate VP. For the past 2 decades, he has led the bank as its president and CEO, building the lending base from under $200 million to more than $4 billion today. NCB is multifaceted, but its core business remains housing cooperatives, business cooperatives, and other socially responsible organizations. While the term social entrepreneur is popular today, Chuck and his colleagues at NCB were indeed social entrepreneurs back when it wasn't sexy, helping to pioneer lending to low-income communities. We hope you'll leave here today pondering the messages delivered, and with great pleasure, please join me in welcoming back to JMU, Chuck Snyder.
Thanks for coming today. When I graduated in ’75, if I was sitting in your seat, I probably wouldn't be here because I would have found some excuse to do something else. It impresses me that we have such a big crowd here today. And I got something I think important to tell you guys. It's about the bank, about how you can make good money as well as serve our society and help out and do good things. But I did graduate in 1975, an accounting degree, and I got sort of into banking, into Madison, sort of in a sort of crazy way. I come from Reading, Pennsylvania, and I wanted to go to school. My father died when I was 10 years old. My mother sold linings and pocketbooks, and so I didn't have much money. And I got accepted to Penn State and wanted to go out of school. And my grandmother lived right down in Dayton, Virginia. And I got accepted to Madison College, which was not a very difficult thing to do back then because it was primarily a teacher school. And at that point in time, there was a lot of women that came to Madison, but not too many men. And I was the class of '71 was the first class that was 50-50. And if you were a guy and applied to Madison, you got in. And so with that, distinction, I got to Madison here. And I really enjoy James Madison University. I got extremely lucky because James Madison University, I hope you can appreciate, I don't know how you appreciate it now, but in comparison to other schools, JMU is very student-centric. And they care about the student. And other universities, I was on the board of trustees at George Washington University where I got my MBA back in '84. And they are more university or professor-driven. And I think a lot of the professors think that it's a really good school if there was all these students around. Madison is different. They really care about you guys. And I really think that as a result you get a better education, better social experience, etc. And so it's with great pleasure that I come back to Madison here. But let's look at the crowd here a little bit as far as your students. How many of you guys are in business versus non-business majors? Raise your hands. Business first. Non-business in? That's pretty good, 50-50. All right, how many are seniors? Juniors? Sophomores? My goodness, this is really perfect too. And then freshmen. Any freshmen? There we go. Gosh, this is a very diverse group here. Let's talk a little bit about the Great Recession. I lived that firsthand. It was like Groundhog Day for me. I would look out my office window on Pennsylvania Avenue, not far from Treasury, and I'd look down and see these people, and they would just be going around their normal business, and I wanted to shout out the window, "The world's falling apart!" And it certainly was for a lot of institutions. We securitize a lot of our loans. We have about $8 billion of loans or assets that we manage at the bank. And we just had about a portfolio of $450 million worth of mortgages, which we had originated and we were ready to sell off in the capital markets. And back in 2007, in the summer, the spread started to widen. And what was happening was, in a single family, they had taken some of this real junk and started to put it into securitizations back in 2006, and some of those deals had started to fall apart. And people started to lose money and started to get very concerned. And all of a sudden, 2007 comes, and everyone starts to head for the doors. And so we normally sell mortgages, for 2.5, 3 points as far as profit. And all of a sudden, we had a 10-point loss on that $450 million because investors around the United States and the world wanted a heck of a lot more money. And all of a sudden, we took probably a $10 million gain and turned it into a $40 million loss. That's something that catch your attention. And then you have other financial dealings. Now, we didn't sell it for $40 million. We only sold it for a $10 million loss, which is considered to be a pretty good transaction. But the Great Recession was a result of a lot of different things. You hear people talking about Fannie and Freddie, and which is true. Fannie and Freddie definitely contributed to the issues. Alan Greenspan, after 9/11, lowered interest rates to extremely low levels, kept them down there for a long time. People decided to borrow to buy bigger and bigger houses, and all of a sudden, if you take a look at the charts, it just went straight up. It was not sustainable. You had all sorts of banks. J.P. Morgan just agreed to pay Freddie Mac, I think, $5.1 billion for loans that had put in a package and sold off. And within 6 months, a good 25% of those mortgages were terminated. You have consumer debt levels that were really, really high. In accounting, market rules where you hold any investment securities, market goes down, you have to mark those to market. That was tremendous capital hits in a lot of financial institutions. There was just, when the liquidity dried up, it really dried up. And I really recommend if you have a Netflix account, there's about an hour film called Hank Paulson, who was the Treasury Secretary at the time. The 5-year anniversary reminisces about the situation. He was very, very concerned. On our board, we actually have a government charter. We have one actually from Treasury sitting on our bank board, usually as the assistant treasury for 4 financial institutions. It gives me an inside view as far as what's happening at Treasury. And they have an inside view as far as what's happening in banking. And everyone was just tremendously concerned that we were going to go into the Great Depression. And when Hank Paulson said that he needed that huge bazooka to get the economy turned around, he was absolutely right. Because when you have a crisis like that and everything gets a slippery slope and you don't have the trust and confidence of investors, you need to do something that's very, very dramatic. And so he went to Congress and asked for, I think, $700 billion. And I said, gee, I want to see this piece of legislation that he's asking $700 billion. And so I called over to our regulatory attorney. I said, could you send it over to me? He said, sure. He sent it over to me. It was 3 pages. Basically, it said, please send me money. I really need it. Congress turned it down initially, and then about 2 weeks later approved it. But it was a big enough bazooka that got the thing turned around. And we live in a global environment these days. It's just not the United States. The Chinese were sort of okay with everything until we could serve Fannie and Freddie. That weekend, the Chinese realized it was a bigger deal than what was originally had been portrayed. And everything changed almost overnight. The regulators, who had been lax for a very long period of time, not only with lending standards and capital standards, all of a sudden decided that they better get these corrected. And they raised the capital standards, raised lending standards, just at the time that really there was needed more liquidity. So in actuality, they actually hurt the economy initially with some of those demands, because what happened was that financial institutions, because of those capital ratios needed to go up, didn't want to lend. Every time they lent, they needed more capital. They were struggling to keep the capital that they were they needed currently. And as a result, you had a tremendous issue with liquidity. And we had the Great Recession in 2009. 800,000 jobs were lost in 1 or 2 months. You know, we still have not, and this is 5 years later, have not recouped those jobs that we lost during the Great Recession. It's just amazing. It's just flat out amazing to me that 5 years later we still have not come back to where we're at. So it's a very interesting time. We're rewriting the history books. The Treasury of the United States is in its third rendition of quantitative easing. And basically what they're doing, every month, they're taking $85 million worth of treasuries, of the treasury money, and buying mainly mortgage-backed securities in the marketplace and treasuries. And now they have, I think it's a $2 trillion balance sheet, soon to become $3 trillion, to keep the interest rates low. And unfortunately, there's not much gas in the tank, and the economy is limping along. Even with all that stimulus, the economy is still only producing, last month was 144,000 jobs. In a healthy economy, that number should be 300,000. So we are still struggling from the Great Recession. Now, how did we respond? We responded quickly. We had to downsize. We had to sell off a lot of assets. But we treated everyone fairly. And as I tell my board of directors, no one's suing us, and we're not suing anybody. And I don't think a lot of major financial institutions can say that. And J.P. Morgan Chase set aside $23 billion just recently for various different lawsuits. $23 billion. I mean, that's just an amazing number. And at NCB, we treated our employees fairly. We treated our customers fairly. We didn't retrade anybody. I mean, during the height of the Great Recession, it was not unusual for a bank to, when they called upon to honor a commitment they had with the customer, they said, sorry, sue us if you don't like, we're not going to fund it. And so there was a lot of businesses that struggled as a result of relying upon credits, which they thought were outstanding. It didn't come to fruition. So, will we ever get out of this mess? Absolutely. We're getting out of it now. Unemployment has improved. It is 7.4%. Underemployment is still 16 or 17%. But things are getting better. So for the freshmen that are attending here, you're probably a little bit better shape than some of the seniors here. But we're slowly digging ourselves out of this tremendous hole that we've created. But NCB is doing fine. We've raised our capital levels. I just reviewed those. They're like 13%, which is very heavily capitalized. And we got we restructured our balance sheet. We used to get almost all of our funding on Wall Street. And you name the type of deal, and I've done it. Whether it be a commercial paper or private placement, I've done all sorts of structured finance deals that have been funded off balance sheet, et cetera. And that was all great when everything was fine and dandy. But when the music stopped, being a smaller institution, when GE Capital can't fund itself, NCB couldn't fund itself. That's when the Fed came in and turned over and made Goldman Sachs and and a lot of these larger financial institutions into commercial banks. It's interesting. Goldman Sachs, big man on the hill as far as leaderboards and a lot of capital markets transactions. Probably would have went bankrupt within probably a week of that action if the Fed had not stepped in. That's how serious it was, and that's an interesting thing. Now, I know that everyone has been outraged at the incentives. I was outraged as well, and they continue to pay incentives to everyone, basically, even throughout this time of getting bailed out. At NCB, being an ethical-driven institution, I actually told the board in 2008 that no, it was not proper for us to accept a bonus, and we didn't take it. We didn't take one in 2009, and we didn't take one in 2010. Now we're starting to make money, and actually the board is probably going to do some catch-up as a result of us doing better. But the performance of management is in relationship to the direct performance of the company. And what seriously went wrong, and that's the reason why you saw all these protests and things, is that the incentive compensation was not matched up with the economic realities of the company. So that was a tremendous thing that got itself turned around. Ethics is so important. I didn't take an ethics class. I don't think it was offered here at Madison. I graduated. It was during not too far from what we have right now, and there was a recession in the 73, 74 time frame. Jobs were hard to come by, and I got a job with Cooperative, the poultry company. And I remember my grandmother that I lived with actually had a chicken house, and so I knew a little bit about chickens, so I got to work for them, and I got very lucky. I started as a staff accountant, and 2 years later I was the divisional controller of a several $100 million division. And I worked extremely hard. But one of the things I didn't like, I got there about 6 months into my job, and the controller asked me into this office. I said, "Okay, what do you want?" And he wrote this number down and he gave it to me. And I said, "What's this?" He said, "Oh, that's the inventory that you're working on." I said, "Well, we haven't taken the inventory." He said, "No, that's the inventory." Okay. And then he leaned over his desk and he says, "You need to get those shoes dirty." Here I am, 23 years old, just graduated from James Madison University. Never thought in my life that I would be struggling with an ethical question. I mean, I needed my next paycheck to pay my rent. I was not in a position to say no. Luckily, the inventory that I was working on came extremely close to the number that he wanted. So, ethical issue number one sort of went down by the wayside. Ethical issue number two, about a couple months later, they asked me to prepare this analysis. I said, sure. So I prepared this analysis. And what it was analysis of was Frank Perdue versus other competitors in the industry. There was Holly Farms and a few of the Swift at that point in time. There was like 3 or 4 companies, and I was comparing against Frank Perdue's numbers. And I did that. They liked the analysis. And they said, Chuck, you did a really good job. We want you to do it next time. I said, okay. And they said, well, when do you want me to do it? I said, well, the information will be in a brown envelope and we'll put it on your chair. I said, what's that? They didn't say anything. They were totally silent. What they wanted me to do was to do this analysis, which I did. But then I found out later that basically they were paying someone to accumulate the numbers to give to me to do it. I didn't like that at all. So, I was just about ready to quit. I got promoted to divisional controller. Here I am, 23 years old, getting a $100 million division, getting paid significant money. The only divisional controller that didn't have a Harvard MBA was me, and I was 23 years old. And so I went down there and was doing a good job down in North Carolina, and we were growing leaps and bounds, and Frank Perdue called me up. and said to me, "Chuck, I want you to fire the receptionist. She's a union organizer." And I said, "Frank, she's not smart enough to be a union organizer. The old Lily Tomlin, the week before your day, would share her thing was one ringy-dee, two ringy-dee thing. She was a good receptionist, but she was not a union organizer." And she said, and Frank said, "Look, if you don't fire her, you're fired by Friday." So what am I going to do? So I thought about it, and I said, well, came out a day later and said, well, we're cutting back. And so I cut back that one position. But I decided to leave. I said, I am not going to do this. And so I left Frank Purdue and came up to Washington, D.C. and studied for my CPA and got my CPA certificate. But the reason why I mention that is that you need to be ready. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. But there is ethical situations in your career that you will encounter. And you need, before you get there, this is sort of, where's your mill? Where's your lines as to, what you will do and what you won't do. And you need to think about that a little bit before that. Think twice about being a whistleblower, too. The whistleblowers usually do not end up well, because corporations are very powerful, and they can fight back. And they usually do. But one of the things that I was lucky to do is that I met an attorney back in 1983 after I left the CPA firm and worked for, started working for the bank, and we had an ethical issue. And it was a legal thing. It was dealing with the United States Treasury and the Congress, and the legal folks said, yes, you can do this. And then this old 83-year-old gentleman named Larry Ladd sitting at the table, and he says, you can do that, but is that the right thing to do? And, guess what? He was absolutely right. And so find someone, whether it's a coworker, your dad, your mom, whomever, call me up. Just ask the question, is that the right thing to do? Once you lose trust, it is very difficult to get it back. And I've seen careers being ruined by lack of trust. I've had 6 young folks just graduated from college that have cheated on throughout the years, have cheated on their travel and entertainment expenses. And they got caught. Well, guess what? They got fired for stupid stuff. $100 here, $300 there. You can't work for a financial institution if the financial institution can't trust you. And yes, there's probably some circumstances this way or that way. But just make sure that you understand the consequences and lead that ethical life. It's so important, and it'll sneak up and approach you before you really know it. Let's talk a little bit about the social responsibility and a purpose-driven institution. I'd like to say that the National Cooperative Bank does well to do good. And, I say this many times to our employees. I don't want to have in my gravestone, gee, I made a lot of money, or he made a lot of money. I'd rather say in my tombstone, he did a little good for some people. And I do pretty well financially. To get the, what do you think that you need to, what sort of income do you need to get into the top 1% in the United States? Any guesses? Everyone's complaining about being a 1%. What do you think?
Is it billions?
Nope. Try hundreds of thousands.
Oh, about 1%.
Low. 366, I think. It just went up to 377 or something like that. During the 2007, I think it was 426. And so it's actually come down in the last couple of years. So, the 1%, you don't have to really make that much money to get into that 1%. And I'm lucky because I earn a multiple of that 1%. And I do very well financially. But I also am very proud of the fact that I help people out doing good stuff. And how do we do that? Well, we're a purpose-driven institution. We're an institution that has a double bottom line. We have one that, and I expect a lot of our employees. I expect them to work hard. I expect them to work together as a team. I expect them to have solutions. I expect them to come together and to find those innovative things that provide our competitive advantage. We mark ourselves all the time. You are what you measure. And if you measure yourself against the competition, you will sharpen your pencil and find out better solutions. But we do well, but we also do good in that we will take a look at loans for small businesses. I was just came back from a annual meeting of ShopRite. Does anybody come from New York, New Jersey? Does anybody know ShopRite? ShopRite is owned by 50 independent store operators, and they're very, very successful. It's really interesting. They, back in the 50s and 60s, really earned dirty and cheap. They had dirty stores, and they were the cheapest guys on the block. And then they decided that they really needed to up their game. And they run much cleaner stores, and they're still very low prices. But they really have done a very good job of dealing with the community, and so that they can talk about buying local produce and really mean it too, and not like just Safeway and whatever, where they sort of throw up a quick ad or something like that. Most ShopRites have a nutritionist. And the nutritionist is a community asset that you get discharged from the hospital or from a doctor that needs a special diet. And they work with the healthcare professionals to go down to the store to design a diet that's especially for you. And you do those things, and yes, it costs money, but you also develop a very loyal customer base by doing that. And that loyal customer base pays off, and because they're not just a customer for 1 week, they're a customer for 52 weeks out of the year. And guess what? They're willing to pay a nickel more here and a nickel more there because that is their grocery store. And they just recently did a survey of the loyalty of their customers in relationship to their competition, whether it's Pathmark's a really crummy store, but some other stores up there. And, Whole Foods is a great grocery store. They're a little bit on the expensive side. And people like those stores. But are they really, loyal and passionate about that store? Some customers are, many are not. But in comparison to the ShopRite stores, because they are purpose-driven, because they concentrate on doing these things, they do much better. I talked to one of the store owners the other day, and there was a mother that was in the cereal aisle and couldn't find the cereal because of the allergy. And he said, "That's no problem. I'll have my deli make it for you." You think that's a loyal customer? That's an extremely loyal customer after that. And they do very well. They make a lot of money. The average ShopRite probably does at least $1 million of sales a week. That's $52 million of sales, and they probably make 2% bottom line. That's $1 million a store, and most of these guys own several stores. So they do extremely well, and they do extremely well because they care about their customer and their purpose-driven institutions. NCP is the same way. During this Great Recession, I was talking about everyone was running for the hills and changing banks and this and that. We didn't lose anybody. We didn't lose one customer. Occasionally they would call us up and say, "How are you guys doing?" And we would tell the stories. But we would try to be very honest, tell the good with the bad. But we didn't lose any. Bank of America, about 2 years ago, decided that they were going to raise their monthly charge is $5 a month. You might have seen that in the news. $5 a month, and there was a protest against it. There was some lady that blogged about how did this Bank of America charge $5 more a month. It's very difficult economic times. They got a bailout from the federal government, and now they're sticking it to the American taxpayer again. And so she blogged about it and said, you should dump your bank debt. Well, that turned into a movement. It's almost like the Egyptian, thing with Twitter and social, where all of a sudden one person told the other person to tell the other person. And in one short month, credit unions, which are financial cooperatives, had 800,000 new members. And yes, they charge reasonable fees. A lot of them don't charge any fees whatsoever. They did charge that $5, but the people weren't moving their bank accounts because of that $5 fee. They were moving that bank account because they were investing in, or they wanted to do business with the institution that lined up with their ethics and not someone else's ethics. To get someone to move their checking account is a big deal. I mean, most people, and you're pretty young, but you ask the average person on the street how long have they had their checking account? 20 years, 15 years, 30 years. About how long have you had your checking account?
12 years since I got to Harrisonburg, we changed banks.
There we go. So you're very typical. Move to a new organization, new geographical location, you open a checking account, and you keep it. So you got to be really mad to move your checking account. Here's $5 fee a month. Everyone can afford $5 a month, but they didn't view it as being ethical, and 800,000 people left. It's a tremendous story about how a purpose-driven institution. We at National Cooperative Bank have now started to become what we think is a triple bottom line institution, in that we do a lot of things with sustainable businesses. We're one of the largest lenders in the solar space. And it's good business. It's good credit quality, good interest rates. We have a little niche that we have spent a fair amount of time understanding and developed all sorts of nice relationships. Our regular customers, our employees, really like the idea that we are helping the environment by investing in solar arrays. And solar is really coming on strong. We just did a project down in North Carolina, 14 cents a kilowatt hour total cost, all in before we went up without the subsidies. And that's pretty much on par with the good price. And the reason for that is the silicon has come down in price. And plus, they're not onesies and twosies anymore. They're building solar panels in much bigger arrays, and it's becoming much more economical. So you'll see more solar around as that cost comes down. And it's scalable. It's really scalable. You can put it in the rooftop. Most of the ones that we have done have been on open land, 40, 50 acres of solar panels, and have produced electricity almost exactly to the specs. We did one recently in New Jersey, and I was just joking with the solar people. I said, if you can do a solar panel in New Jersey, you can do solar anywhere. I said, how about Florida? And I said, no, actually, the solar output in New Jersey is greater than that down in Florida. I said, how's that possible? Well, Florida has a lot of humidity, and it doesn't have as high of solar power as a result of and lower humidity up in New Jersey. So I was totally surprised. So the solar panels can be used pretty far north. The last couple we've done have been up in the state of Massachusetts. And these are fixed rate, they don't tilt or anything. So you can run an ethical institution that has a competitive advantage because you care, because your customers relate to you a little bit more, because they feel like they're cared for and listened to, etc. They're willing to pay a little bit more. And I just think it's a fantastic thing, especially when we live in a global society. Citibank, I hate to pick on Citibank. Citibank recently came out with this commercial, come bank with Citibank, because We bank 100 million customers in 100 countries. And somehow that's supposedly impress your customer when you open up a checking account. I don't care about 100 countries. I don't care about 100 million people. All I care about is myself. And that is, our credit unions and the bank, we care directly about you. And so that's the reason why it's been good business for us. We've been able to grow significantly. That's the reason why our credit quality is a little bit better than other financial institutions. And that's the reason why we can make good money so that we can reinvest in some of these other areas. And so, there's probably about 1,000 community development financial institutions in the country. They're called CDFIs. And I highly recommend as a career for you to take a look at in the CDFI industry. They're doing a lot of very interesting things, and there's a lot of opportunity. Let's open it up for some questions. What sort of questions do you have?
So you have like a triple bottom line. Can you just explain that more? Because you're saying how you try to use that to do.
Sure. The first bottom line is making money.
Okay.
We like to make money. If you don't make money, you can't do the other stuff.
Right.
Our employees like to make money too. They have mortgages, they have families, they have cars. It's not a bad thing to make money. Now, greed to excess, that's a little bit different deal. Wall Street is driven by total greed. Don't have any disillusion about that. They have their PR and all this other stuff, but they want to make money. The first bottom line is financial. The second bottom line is doing some social good with your money, and that could be from a host of different things. Job creation to healthy foods to education to healthcare, something that the society needs to lift itself up a little bit. That's our second bottom line. And then the third bottom line is our sustainable energy and green efforts. It's really funny. I was a little bit slow on this. Maybe it's my age. You guys probably get the green movement a heck of a lot easier than me. During this economic downturn, the Great Recession, we were looking for ways to cut costs, and we were trying to trim here and trim there. And about the same time, we had moved our operations center from D.C. over to Crystal City, and several hundred jobs, and they in Arlington have a much better recycling program, and so we decided, okay, and they wanted to become LEED certified and all this other stuff, and we thought, okay, well, let's try to do our little part here as far as green and recycling, and we did some education, and we just two-sided our copies, and we did a lot of different things, and we started to save some money. And then we came to our annual report, and our annual report is this big glossy book, costs us a lot of money. And someone says, we should do away with that because that's not too green. And so I said, well, maybe okay. So we did away with it. No one complained about it. And I'm thinking, gosh, we saved $250,000 by not printing this annual report. I said, I'm really liking this green stuff. So it can be good business. And, it's really funny. GE Capital is very active in windmills and solar and stuff. They're doing it to make money because they have realized that a lot of this green activity you can charge a little bit higher rates and can be pretty good from the standpoint of financial. Other questions?
There's one over to your right, Jeff.
You said that back in 2008, 2009, there weren't any bonuses given out. Was that to you, or was that just yourself, or the executive as well, all the other executives?
It was the executive. All employees got bonuses, but they got less. In other words, what I tell our employees, look, we want you to work hard. We want you to be engaged. And if we do well, you would do well. Everyone in the bank has some sort of incentive, including your receptionist and that person, everybody. And so when it came to 2008, we had less profits. The senior management team decided to show some leadership and said, to the point of the board and said, look, We did earn some bonus. It was lower than what we would have liked, and we're going to take the pain first. And so we voluntarily didn't take about a 30% bonus. Not too many other financial institutions did that. Now, is that foolish? Maybe, I don't know. A little less money, but you get the high road when you do things like that. Your employees will respect you a little bit more. They'll stay engaged. They won't become cynical. The Gallup poll, Gallup.com, which I recommend to everyone. You should go in there periodically to take a look at trends in the United States. They have been tracking engagement in the United States. It's sort of difficult to define what engagement really is, but engaged employees are ones that are really actively in their job and they're not just coming, showing the work and getting their time card functioning when they want home. Gallup estimates that the average U.S. company has about 25% of their employees in that sort of engagement category. 25%. That means 75% of the average worker in the United States is not engaged in their job. That is an incredible number. Now, how do you want engagement? You want engagement through fairness. You want engagement through empowerment. You want engagement through solid teamwork, a sense of purpose, of goals, et cetera, et cetera. And, you want them to have a belief in leadership. And if they are cynical or they don't feel that their work will make any sort of contribution to their overall results, they will become disengaged. I had the opportunity of going to the Soviet Union in 1986 on a trade delegation, and went over, and this is during the old Soviet system. It was when Gorbachev was in. They actually had arranged some exchanges of business leaders and stuff, and I was picked to go there. Some people accused me of being a spy. I was not a spy. But anyways, I went over to the Soviet Union in '86 and saw a system of totally disengaged employees because they were not given a say in the workplace. They were basically the Communist Central Committee, controlled everything. And the people were great. They were really wonderful people. I had some really fond memories of my visits and stories that the Russians told and everything like that. And the science that they had, we had toured all over Russia and saw some of the science that they were very, very good. But the average person was not engaged, and they didn't really care. All they wanted to do was go home and drink vodka, which I did a fair amount of. Other questions?
You mentioned someone should think twice about being a whistleblower. What do you recommend that we should do if we are ever faced with an ethical situation?
Go talk to someone. Talk it out. It's some Sarbanes-Oxley, which I'm sure you all heard about, has some whistleblower things in there, and rightfully so. I mean, there was some huge defaults. Enron was one of those energy company down in I guess Houston or Dallas, whatever. And there was in today's corporation so large, so complex. There's no way that any sort of large mass scale of craziness can happen without other people knowing it. So employees do know. And so there was in Enron and some of these other high profile, there was people that really sort of knew, but they didn't necessarily want to come forward because they didn't want to fight the corporation or whatever. So any public company, and we have an ombudsman, we have you can send in a complaint into this PO box, which has various different controls on, which our internal auditor will review and go right to the chairman of the board and all those other things. And so there's been a lot of safeguards put in for whistleblowers. But it's really difficult. When someone comes in to complain in my office, I will say, okay, great. You can tell me your story, but let me just tell you something. There's your side of the story, and their side of the story, and the truth. And usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. And most whistleblowers tend to color it a little bit. Not much. Some are very honest. But the truth is somewhere a little bit in between. They probably will lose their job. It's very difficult to get economic compensation. The time period of which the thing will get resolved is usually very long. It's very difficult to get another job. Now, is that to say that you shouldn't report wrongdoing? No, I am absolutely 100% believe that you should be ethical in your job. It's just to be very careful about how you approach your disclosure. And I think each situation is different. Snowden, there's folks on both sides of the fence with Snowden, the leaks of NSA and stuff like that. He's your classical whistleblower. And, a lot of people will say he's a hero. And, gee, great. And then there's other people on Capitol Hill that said he's a traitor. Here's a man, no matter which side you fall on, is now living in exile in Russia. And that's what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that from a whistleblower standpoint, you got to be willing to sort of navigate through the consequences. What is the best way to do that? I don't know. I don't know the inside facts. Should he be reported that to his supervisor or to someone else? I don't know if he would have been heard. I don't know. He may be very satisfied where he's at. He may say, I accomplished what I wanted. But there's other people would say that it's a very difficult life. Putin doesn't want. Russia could care less. They just want a little political points on the side. The United States government would love to get that, and they wouldn't treat it very well.
We only have a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Some of these students have to leave by 3:20 to get to other classes. Maybe time for one more question.
I don't know a lot about the financial crisis, but I know that in recent years I heard that profits for businesses are at all-time highs,
Right.
but yet our unemployment is still at 8%.
Right.
What do you think about that? Why won't businesses hire people? How's that?
Well, a couple different things. One is the overall economic environment is one of sort of slowly getting better. So it's not one that you're going to invest heavily in that you feel like you can get a significant return back. That's probably dampening it a little bit. The other thing that's dampening is that operating efficiency in the United States and in the world is continuing to get better. And so corporations don't necessarily need to hire more people. They need to utilize the technology and efficiencies that they have. So they're getting less need really for those folks. Also, too, as far as they can't raise their top line sales, if you take a look at the PE multiples for corporations, they're getting a little bit on the frothy side in comparison to sort of the economic growth and sales growth. And so to maintain that, they need to have pretty strong profitability. And so that's pretty, if their top line sales growth was a little bit better, they'd be more inclined to hire people because they could feel like they could earn their way out of them. So it's going to be interesting to sort of see, but 144,000 job non-farm payroll increase last month is pretty new. This economy all throughout the early 2000s routinely was producing 300,000, 300,000 or stuff like that. That unemployment rate doesn't tell the whole story. Underemployment is around 16-17%, and that is the people that have lost their jobs, that have got jobs, but have not come back into, they're not making the current fund. In other words, they've left a professional job and taken maybe a more mechanical menial they're, from an unemployment standpoint, they're not counted in that 7.4, but they're counted in that underemployment. The underemployment number is still very high, it's 70%. Also, the number to take a look at is the overall employment number. The number is like 43% or something like that. That number has not really improved either. In other words, the number of Americans living in the United States that are gainfully employed has not really improved all that much. And that puts pressure on the situation. So they're not hiring. There's good news today. Anybody wants to talk to me about, I'll offer 2 internships to some folks. We'll pay $20 an hour. The job will be up in Crystal City. And we can do a finance thing, we can do a marketing thing, we can do all sorts of HR. We do various different departments, but I want to give back. It's important that we're a purpose-driven institution, and I want to give back to JMU. And if you're interested in a summer internship, it'll probably be from like let's say June 15th through August 15th, 2 months. Pay $20 an hour. So come see me. Thank you.